Give the camera just a second in the back. You guys let me know when you're ready. You guys good in the back? All right. Coach, whenever you're ready, sir.
All right, I'm going to tell you what, we had a very special guest today. Kevin Carter came back to talk to the team this morning, and I met Kevin a little bit over a year ago and was very impressed. Obviously, we all know about his playing career, but just to see, what he's accomplished professionally and how he represents the University of Florida. And man, let me tell you something. He gave us 30 minutes of absolute fire. I mean, this guy was passionate and really challenged our players in a lot of ways. I think challenging them to take this opportunity that they have and make a great memory. And talked about a story as a player, as a rookie, veteran player that challenged him early in his career and kept asking him, why are you here? And what are you here for? And having really high expectations for him and how that player mentored him and helped him become who he was. So he specifically talked about it being a hard line, and it's not easy in this place and all that it's accomplished. And certainly, one of the things we're trying to do with our young men is bring back Gators that played here, had significant success on the field, but have continued to have success off the field and represented the place the right way. And I think Kevin's done a great job. It's important that we kind of have a generational gap here, right? We need to educate our players about the significant success that this place has had in the past. So Kevin was awesome. I wanted to personally thank him for that. This weekend's a good weekend. We've got two players graduating. Mark Pitts and Jadarius Perkins are both getting their degree from the University of Florida. And it's always a great day. I was walking out of the facility just a few days ago talking to Mark about it. And, these guys work hard. And they come here and they start their story and to get to the finish line. I think we all remember that day when we were finished with our classwork, right, and we got our degree and we're walking across that stage. So really proud of Mark and Jadarius and, the approach they've taken to academics. So, I think for the most part I was pleased with the scrimmage. I thought we could have, in space, we didn't necessarily tackle as well as maybe we would like in the secondary. But I do think that there was a lot of quality football. I think there's going to be a ton of coaching that we can do this afternoon and tonight and even tomorrow morning as we head into the next, kind of group of installations that we're approaching here. But in general, I think moving forward, our focus is on our practice habits. It's on our self-discipline relative to what is required to be a really good football player at this level. And then certainly the roles are to be determined. We've got really a two deep here in terms of rotational players. This will be a very, very competitive week as decisions are approaching. And then the game changer depth chart, is obviously really important. So ton of things to work on. I think the staff, we've kind of challenged them to present plans for each player, each position group, and the unit as a whole relative to between play process, communication, alignment, technique, and fundamentals, I think. And then we have to take a big picture look at what concepts we need to add, what situations that we need to work, and then what personnel that we what adjustments we need to make in that regard. So a little bit of an injury update. Justice Boone has torn his ACL and will have surgery in about 2 weeks. And, I would tell you this is one of the more challenging parts of the job for me relative to having a great relationship with a young man and then observing him work and change his life as a person and as a football player, and not just the production on the field that Boone brings to our team, but more importantly, his presence as a leader. And I do think this will galvanize our team. I think this is a guy they really love and care about, and will want to do their part to make up for his absence on the field. I think that we have that level of respect and accountability amongst our players and team. But we're going to rally around Boone. You know, there's a ton of success stories in this game of players who've had this injury and have went through the return to play and rehab process and come back and had significant success. So, you know, I think all Gators need to lift up our boy Boone today. You know, he's one of the best ones we have. So, you know, Xander's was out. Probably will be without Xander's for 10 days or so. You know, he has a lower body injury. Kelby Collins is kind of in the same category. He could be back sooner than later. We're excited to get back. I think tomorrow we'll get back Scooby and Jason Marshall and Lindell. So we're kind of, you know, we got a few that we're losing, a few that we're getting back. So we're in a relatively same place there. And some of this is, you know, we're being cautious with some of these guys. So I know we all want to talk about quarterback. We'll have that decision for you. We're going to go through a process with our players and obviously our staff. Quick turnaround from yesterday, so we'll let you know when that's been done. But overall, good day yesterday outside of Justice's injury, and we continue to make progress as a football team. What questions do we have here?
Open up for questions, guys.
Justice non-contact this drill.
It's actually post play. You know, it was just believe it or not, it was celebrating after the play was over. It's really a non-contact. I mean, you wouldn't even. I mean, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't. He's just running off the field. So, one of those head scratchers, you know, and yeah, anytime you have a non-contact injury, I think causes you to ask a lot of questions.
Talk to players about not getting overly effusive when they sell, because there have been some famous injuries where guys do that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that passion and emotion's part of the game. I mean, this is less than 1%, you know. So, but the big thing is that, you know, I think we're prepared to provide the level of support that Justice is going to need, you know, and I think, you know, it's a big deal. You know, this is one of our guys that, you know, he kind of, he's what a University of Florida football player should be, right? So, ton of respect for him as a person and as a teammate.
Yeah, we really enjoyed talking to him last week, so tough for the kid. What are you going to need to see at quarterback? I mean, a lot of people are just assuming it's going to be Graham. I mean, Graham transferred here. He's got 32 starts.
Yeah, we've seen enough. I think the big thing is we want to go through a process with our players and team before we announce to the media, if that makes sense. So, and, you know, we're on a schedule, and we'll get that accomplished, and we'll let you know.
Is historical perspective something, to your point about Kevin Carter, you see missing sometimes with young players? I mean, I'll talk to players sometimes. I mean, I'm old, but bring something up, and I'm like surprised I never even heard of the guy.
Yeah.
I think that's important for them to have.
Well, I think that, you know, I think it's important that we understand the history behind the place, you know, and I think what has the place done for people like Kevin Carter, and what did he do for the place, and the significance of history, and, you know, why we have the brand we have today, right? And how dominant the University of Florida football was in certain eras, if that makes sense. And we've done quite a bit of that in this training camp. But I think bringing back a player that has a special place in his heart and speaks with passion, you're talking about playing 14 years, a couple different SEC championships. The guy's won a Super Bowl, and now has a significant career in the game, as a broadcaster and working with covering football. So I think Kevin has a unique perspective relative to University of Florida, but more important, the game of football and what it can do, right? He also has a 22-year-old son. So I think he has a perspective that I think can really help our young people, because he just, he's got a son who's in the same place to some degree.
Rotation looking like now with Justice gone, who moves in and who's first guy, backup, et cetera?
Well, I think you've got the two true freshmen. Obviously, their role will increase, right? Kelby Collins and Cameron James. But there's a number of players from a grouping standpoint that will be a factor. Tyreek Sapp, even Caleb Banks to some degree is a versatile player. And Jack Pyburn can play both sides. He can play Jack and F. So we've got confidence in the players. We're just going to have a little less experience out there that maybe, Justice brings some experience to the table, and leadership in general. So the challenge here will be replacing that presence, and we're going to do as much as we can to try to keep him connected to that position group, that unit, and the team. But I think the big thing here is that there'll be a few more things to learn for some of these players, but in general, will be some adjustments that need to be made.
You mentioned Jack Pyburn. What have you seen out of him from the time you've been here into where he's at right now?
Yeah, Jack's one of the more impressive young men that we have, in terms of work ethic, self-discipline. He's very motivated. And Jack's one of those guys that is at his best when the pads are on. He is a motor. He's tough. He's physical. He plays with effort. He's a smart player. He has the respect of his teammates. He has the respect of the staff. And this guy had probably one of the best off seasons, if not the best, of any player on our team, right, in terms of body composition, all the metrics that we test. He had made significant improvements. So there is, he's another good example. He's got that Gator in him. That's what I would tell you, right? So Jack is, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Now that Graham's been here for 8 months and 25 practices, and you've mentioned him being a leader, but have you seen that even increase throughout fall camp, and how does that maybe manifest itself on the field?
Who is that again? Yeah, no, I do. I think the big thing I've been impressed with is just his ability to come in and learn the system, to translate what he knows and apply that to our system. And then just, relentless in approach, probably has worked as hard as any player on our team, probably as hard as a lot of players that I've been around, in terms of the unseen hours, right? Those are what I'm talking about specifically. And the self-discipline to have a system, a process, a routine, to work to connect with players, ask very intelligent questions, and is anticipating problems, right? So Graham's done a great job, and he's worked from the minute he pulled up in the parking lot until, just a while ago. He's continued to work to improve. So been very pleased in that regard. Level of professionalism here that I think is respected.
What are you seeing so far in the camp in special teams and return guys? Are you zeroing in on any guys? I say Eugene Wilson was working with punts the other day.
Yeah, no, I think our specialists, it's one of the things that I think is maybe gets overlooked is we do have our specialists back. And I do think they're really good at what they do. And I do think Trace Mack continues to improve, you know, and I do think that Adam has had a great offseason. We all know Crawshaw is one of the elite punters in the country, and Rocco, I think, is not only effective snapping the ball, but can be, you know, in coverage, can provide some good things for our team. So I like that group. I do think that in the returner world, I think, you know, obviously Ricky and Trevor and, you know, Montrell, I think some of these young players like Trey Wilson and Andy Jean, there's a number of these guys that'll be a factor, Aiden Mizell. So we're in the process of working on that, but I don't think there's any question that Trey Wilson will be a factor at some point. But, you know, we've got guys that have experience with Ricky and Trevor there as well.
Like the offensive line played in the scrimmage with Richie out and Mazuka back, and just where you feel like that unit's at?
You know, I feel really good about, I would say, the depth in the interior. You know, I think we've got a handful of really good players. I think the first two tackles are really good players, and then I think it's all about who's the third tackle. That's why it's exciting to get Lindell back. I think we have some talented young players that are starting to come alive. Jalen Farmer in particular, I think he's starting to practice. You know, I think it's starting to, the dots are connecting there. Bryce Lovett, Jordan Herman, you know, those are the guys that we need to come on. I like Richie Leonard. I like Slaughter. So I think we have less issues on the interior and more on the perimeter. That's where we have competition and we need growth, you know, to develop depth on our team. So
About just the execution on both sides of the ball overall in the scrimmage, did you feel like it was maybe cleaner than in the spring? How did you feel about some of those aspects?
yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, just in terms of the precision, you know, the film is cleaner. You know, I do think some of the players we were without affected the quality of the twos, in my opinion, you know, because of the depth. But there's a mixture of lineups out there with those groups. But I think when we put our first group out there, it's starting to look what it's supposed to look like. And then don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of players in that second group that do a really good job. I just think we had a handful of players out that affected the depth, the quality of the scrimmage in that regard.
Where's he?
Yeah, Devin's making good progress. He's in return to play protocol, and we anticipate getting him back in the next couple of days.
Jalen Kimber kind of seized on, I mean, he's a veteran back there. A couple of guys been sitting out
Yeah.
pretty much all week. How's he kind of seized on that?
No, Jalen's been steady. You know, Jalen's done a good job keeping the ball in front of him. He's more physical. I think he did a good job this offseason of, if you go back to his history, coming in with the shoulder, you know, that kind of set him back the first offseason. This was just really his first complete offseason. He gained significant lean mass. So we're very pleased with Kimber. You know, I do think Jakeem and Dede have started to emerge as well. They were both really impressive in the scrimmage. And I think those guys, you know, they'll be a factor in lots of parts of our team, special teams in particular.
Guys, one last question.
From practice to practice, are you seeing less having to repeat the same mistake over and over again? They're getting it the first time and they're corrected, and then they're not doing it again?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, we have a ton of offense and defense in right now. I mean, we have huge amounts of volume. So, you know, we have minimal. The margin of error is a lot smaller. You know, I mean, I think the issues on our team relative to what you're describing are with the young players, right? But I think, again, this is a group we've had 95% or so, 90% of this group since January. So there's only a handful of players that got here in late May, early June. So I feel really good in that regard.